I just recorded a really great podcast episode about fatigue resistance, and while it's still fresh in my mind, I want to talk about this more here on our YouTube channel because this is really important for runners, especially if you are an aspiring marathoner this fall. And let's talk about some of the best workouts to build fatigue resistance into your training so that you don't fall apart at the end of that marathon. Now, here's the thing about fatigue resistance. If you ask 5 different coaches what it means, you might get 5 different answers. So at its most basic, fatigue resistance is resisting local fatigue, particularly at the end of long races. So local fatigue is just that, running specific muscular fatigue that is very common at the end of, say, a marathon, when you've got that really heavy, dead-legged feeling. This is what we can define as local fatigue. And fatigue resistance is planning training that helps you combat that very specific type of running muscle specific fatigue at the end of a race. And it's very similar to muscular endurance. And so a lot of the workouts that we're about to talk about are workouts that are going to build muscular endurance so that at the end of, whether it's a 5K or a marathon, you experience less of that specific local fatigue and you're able to finish strong and feel good throughout the entire race. I should note that fatigue resistance is not anything new. A lot of coaches have been implementing fatigue resistance type workouts in their programs for as long as we've been running. In fact, you can go back to Arthur Lydiard and see some of the workouts he had his athletes doing with running up sand dunes or running through the surf in knee-deep or ankle-deep water. And so these are all examples of running against a little bit of resistance. And that gives us a clue on some of the types of workouts that are going to be helpful for runners who want to build fatigue resistance. We've got to work against some level of resistance. So let's talk about one of these workouts right now, which are hill workouts. Any kind of hill workout pretty much is going to help you build some level of fatigue resistance. Now, I think where the mistake is making the hills either too short or too long. I think 1 minute to 2 minutes is probably the ideal length of time for fatigue resistance workouts because you actually want to be building strength and power while running fast. If you're running 3-minute hills, I worry you're just not going fast enough. And I worry that if you're doing 30-second hills, which are fantastic for power development, we're just not running long enough or struggling enough with enough stress to really build race-specific fatigue resistance. So for hills, let's keep our hill workouts to that 60-second to 2-minute range. I think 90 seconds is probably the ideal kind of hill to use. And we want a moderate grade of maybe 6 to 8% so that we can work against gravity. In this example, that's the resistance we're going for, working against gravity. These kinds of hill workouts are really going to come in handy at the end of races. You know, Frank Shorter once said that hills are speed work in disguise. I also think that hills are strength training in disguise. You're going to build a lot of strength, power, fatigue resistance, and muscular endurance. Our next workout are progression runs or any kind of fast finish run when you've been running for a long time and then you pick up the pace. This is going to teach your body to run fast and to experience the very specific type of fatigue you're going to experience at the end of a long race. So for example, if you're training for a marathon, a very good fatigue resistance workout is to run about 15 miles and then run maybe 5 miles at your goal marathon pace. And this is a great example of you running marathon pace for 5 miles, but in a context that makes it worth a little bit more. You're getting a little bit more out of this 5-mile segment at marathon pace because you're pre-fatiguing your legs. You're running 15 miles at your normal long run, easy effort, and then you're doing your goal marathon pace. So you're experiencing extra fatigue and more muscle damage than you normally would, helping you build a little bit more fatigue resistance into this specific type of workout. You can also do a gradual progression where, let's say you do the same 20-mile run and you gradually pick up the pace over, every 4 to 5 miles. And maybe the last mile is close to your threshold or 10K race pace. This is another great example of a fatigue resistance workout. It's a little bit different. It's a more gradual progression. It has less defined paces throughout, but nevertheless, it is accomplishing the same physiological goal of building fatigue resistance. I could not make these videos without your support. So first, let me say thank you. And this video is brought to you by our very own Performance Training Journal. I have always been in love with hard copy training journals for a few really good reasons. Number one, when I was a new runner and I started keeping an actual training journal like this, I learned so much more about the sport and myself just by that practice. It really forces you to reflect on your training, to think more deeply about what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And if you are constantly reflecting on your training, praising yourself for what's going right, planning for the future, and then looking back on what has previously worked for you, you are gonna really know yourself as a runner, and you're gonna start to make wiser decisions about your training. I also created this training journal because I want you to focus on the training metrics that actually matter. The training metrics that help you improve, get better, and progress with your running. We don't have to focus on everything. We just need to focus on what matters. I also took a lot of inspiration from professional runners that I've talked to on the Strength Running podcast. They're adamant by completing a training journal and reflecting on what works for you and actually giving yourself some praise within your journal. You're essentially completing a gratitude journal. You are building up your confidence in your own abilities over time. And when you look back on that journal before a big goal race, you are going to be reading in your own words why you're capable, why you can do this. And I can think of nothing more confidence building than an act like that. So I hope you check out the new Performance Training Journal. It is now available on Amazon. It debuted as the #4 new release in the running category, and I could not be more proud of it. So thank you again for subscribing to the Strength Running YouTube channel, and I hope you enjoy the Performance Training Journal. And of course, I have to mention one of the classics of building fatigue resistance, high intensity interval training, running 800s or 1000s at your 5K to 10K race pace. These are great workouts at building this specific physiological skill because you're running very fast. And if you can maintain your goal pace throughout the duration of the workout, you're building a lot of strength as well as speed. Let's not forget that speed is a very running specific type of strength. If you can run a 4-minute mile or even a 5-minute mile or a 6-minute mile, you're showing that you're capable of very strong muscular contractions. And if you can do those fairly strong muscular contractions over the course of 4, 5, or 6 minutes, you're demonstrating muscular endurance. And so any kind of really hard, fast workout is going to teach you this skill and build this capacity into your training. And in fact, when I look back on my college running career, we didn't really think about fatigue resistance in this way, but because we did so much high intensity interval training, especially during the track and field seasons, we got really good at this skill. And I was able to run pretty fast and keep doing it over and over again on the track, demonstrating a lot of muscular endurance and a lot of fatigue resistance. Okay, so while those are the best ways of building fatigue resistance through workouts, one of the secondary ways is getting stronger and building that endurance into your muscles through a different means. We can do that with heavy weightlifting. Now, I don't think it's as specific to running, but if you're a beginner or an intermediate runner, some of these workouts might be too hard, honestly. Some high intensity interval workouts or, crazy fast finish long runs just might be too challenging, and you might have to build your capacity for those workouts first. Heavy weightlifting can help you bridge that gap. You're going to be improving your muscular strength, muscular power, and endurance, by lifting heavy weights so that when you are 20 miles into a marathon, you're better able to hold on to your form, you're better able to express your fitness and hold on to that really important goal pace. So yes, we should build a variety of workouts into our training program, but we should also be lifting heavy weights. And if we can do all of these things, we're going to be that much closer to accomplishing our goal on race day. Now, one of the problems with building fatigue resistance is that it requires hard work. It requires hard workouts, hard long runs, heavy weightlifting. So I don't want you to think you have to do all of this all the time or that you have to jump into it very quickly. Let's take things very gradual. Let's not jump into these workouts haphazardly because the injury risk is fairly high. And there's also a wrinkle that we can add to a lot of other kinds of workouts, even the workouts I mentioned here, that's going to add a little bit more of a fatigue resistance stimulus to the workout. And that is a long warm-up, essentially getting yourself a little tired before you actually do the workout. And much like that fast finish long run example that we talked about earlier, if you can run 15 miles and then run 5 miles at goal marathon pace, that's much more indicative of you being able to run your goal pace than, say, if you were to run 5 miles at goal pace with only a mile or two of easy running to warm up. Same is true for a workout. We can run a hill workout, we can do an interval workout with a longer warm up ahead of time to pre-fatigue the legs and give ourselves a little bit of extra stress so that we're learning how to run fast on tired legs. This is a really good strategy for building fatigue resistance, but again, it's risky and it's a little bit more of an advanced strategy. So if you're curious about that, ask your coach, reach out to someone about an example workout that you're thinking about, because after all, I would rather you stay healthy than build a little bit more fatigue resistance, but then end up injured. All right, runners, so no matter what kind of race that you might be training for, I hope they can use this guidance to help you build a little bit more fatigue resistance into your training. So let's remember, hard workouts are going to help. Hill workouts and fast finish long runs are all beneficial, as well as heavy weightlifting. Longer warm-ups are also helpful too. Now, we go into a lot more detail on this week's podcast episode, which is being published, I think it's September 30th, whatever that Thursday is. But if you want to check it out, you can subscribe to the Strength Running Podcast on either Apple or Spotify or wherever you might listen to podcasts.